and Tudors bet on almost anything. Games included dice games, card games, and betting on animal fights. One of the most popular gambling games was called 1 and 30, which was a Tudor version of the modern blackjack. Cockfighting was a national obsession, with people betting on large sums on which rooster would win a fight. Theatre was also a big part of society and daily life. The most famous theatre was called the Globe, which was built in 1599 by Lord Chamberlain's men, which was William Shakespeare's acting company. It held around 3,000 spectators. Plays were performed in the afternoon. As there was no lighting, plays were performed only in daylight hours around 2 p.m. Obviously, women were not allowed to act, so all roles, including female characters, were played by men or young boys. Teenage boys with high voices would play women's roles, wear wigs and makeup. Theatre audiences were noisy and rowdy and would often shout, boo, or even throw rotten food at bad actors. Common people were on the floor and stood up at the front of the theatre, while wealthy people sat in the balconies. Special effects were actually really advanced in plays. Companies used trapdoors, fireworks for battle scenes, and cannons and animal blood to make realistic wounds. It was important for playwrights to please the monarch. For example, Elizabeth loved theatre and was a patron of the arts, so playwrights had to be careful not to offend her, otherwise they could be imprisoned. In 1597, London authorities banned theatres from the city due to concerns over crime and disease, blaming it for plague outbreak. This led to theatres, including the Globe, having to be built outside city walls. Many plays were political and controversial, containing hidden messages or mocking figures, which often led to censorship and arrest. Jousting was a really popular sport for nobles. Henry VIII especially was an enthusiastic jouster until a serious injury in 1536 led him unable to compete. It is debated that he had a brain injury, which led to his change in behaviour and violent tendencies. Tennis was also popular among the rich. However, it was played indoors with wooden rackets with balls made of tightly wound cloth, instead of outside like we know today. Archery was required by law to learn. Every boy over 7 had to practice with a longbow every Sunday, as England relied on their archers for war. The Tudors had some unusual customs and superstitions. People believed sneezing expelled demons, hence why people said God bless you and bless you, which we still say today. Shoes were filled with herbs to ward off evil spirits and bad smells. It was considered unlucky to wash your hair on a Friday. Black cats were feared. Some people believed that they were witches' familiars, while others thought that they brought good luck. After someone died, mirrors around them were covered to prevent the soul from getting trapped inside. The number 13 was unlucky. However, for Elizabeth, her lucky number was number 7. Green was also considered unlucky as it was associated with spirits and fairies. People would be so scared of being buried alive, leading to coffins having bells attached in case the dead woke up. Women in Tudor England had very few legal rights. They were considered property of their fathers or husbands and had no legal independence, not being able to vote, bring legal cases or own property unless they were a widow. Childbirth was extremely dangerous, with many dying in childbirth as medical knowledge and sanitation was limited. This led to a high infant mortality rate. Most women never went to school. Education for girls was done at home. However, noble and wealthy families taught their daughters skills such as sewing, music, manners, and some noble women such as Elizabeth I were fluent in multiple languages including Latin, Greek and French. Women were expected to dress modestly. Women wore long gowns outspoken women were accused of witchcraft and executed. Hundreds of women were burned or hanged under Henry, Mary and Elizabeth. Henry VIII made witchcraft a crime in 1542. Before this, it was seen as a religious offence handled by the church but not an actual crime. However, this changed when Henry made it a crime punishable by death, as he believed witches could threaten his rule. Witches were often blamed for natural disasters such as bad harvests, outbreak of plague, storms and sudden deaths. In times of crisis and upheaval, witch hunts would increase. In times of famine, disease or war, accusations of witchcraft skyrocketed as people were paranoid and looked for someone to scapegoat and blame. However, in England, unlike Scotland, Europe and later America, witch hunts were never a widespread thing. Users often searched for strange birthmarks, moles or scars, believing that these marks were from the devil or a witch had been kissed by Satan. Tudor society experienced huge religious change and upheaval, with the country converting from Catholicism to Protestantism and vice versa. Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church in 1534 after the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon so he could marry Anne Boleyn. This act of supremacy made Henry the supreme head of the Church of England in the UK, or England, and severed ties with Rome. The time of religious change was called the Reformation. England was just one small part of the Reformation which was going across Europe after Martin Luther published his 95 Theses, and Protestantism began to grow. This led to religious turmoil and violence as England shifted between Catholic and Protestant, depending on who was the monarch. For example, while Edward and Elizabeth were Protestant, Mary was very Catholic and used violence against lots of Protestants who rebelled against her. From 1536 to 41, Henry VIII destroyed and dissolved over 800 monasteries and nunneries. He seized all their wealth and land for himself. This led monks and nuns being forced out, and many monasteries were completely ransacked and destroyed, which had massive impacts over local communities who relied on them for hospitals and praying for their souls of the dead. Mary tried to restore Catholicism after Edward's rule. She reinstated the Pope's authority and ordered the execution of over 280 Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. Elizabeth was more moderate in her rule and established her religious settlement in 1559, which made England an officially Protestant country, but did keep some Catholic traditions such as bishops and archbishops. Under her, Catholics faced fines, imprisonment or even execution for practicing their faith. Attending church was mandatory. Under Elizabeth's Act of Uniformity 1559, it required everyone to attend Church of England services on Sunday. Those who refused were fined or imprisoned. The Bible in 1539 was translated to English for the first time when it had only been available in Latin, which allowed ordinary people to read it in English for the first time and make up their own interpretations. So that's everything for today's video. I hope you found some facts interesting and relaxing. And yeah, if you have any